Hey Sugar Bee fam! If you thought the drama in the Gilded Age couldn't get any more intense, think again, because the trailer for Season 3, Episode 6 just dropped, and it looks like Bertha Russell is heading to London. That's right, our Queen of Ambition is crossing the Atlantic, and trust me, she's not going for tea and biscuits. With marriages on the brink, fortunes collapsing, and a duchess under siege, Bertha's London visit is shaping up to be the turning point of the entire season. Let's break it all down, chapter by jaw-dropping chapter. Let's start with Peggy's storyline, which is really heating up. Her relationship with William is deepening, despite the constant interference from his mother. But then they run into Thomas Fortune at a baseball game and things take a turn. Fortune invites Peggy to interview the legendary Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, and Peggy is so tempted to return to journalism. She even considers putting her novel on pause. But William freaks out when he finds out that Fortune plans to go with her. Peggy refuses to travel with her ex, which sparks a fight between the two men. Now Peggy's stuck having to explain this whole complicated past to William. And let's not forget, his mother is watching all of this like a hawk, waiting for her chance to sabotage the relationship. The fallout from this is definitely going to be front and center in episode 6. Meanwhile, our poor Oscar is still furious about Ma. And honestly, rightfully so. Her return as an S-worker confirms that the money she stole is long gone. But Oscar's not giving up just yet. The trailer shows that he confronts her, hoping she'll confess to what she did with the money. I don't think she's ever going to come clean, let alone return any of it. But part of me still wants to know where it went. What do you think? Is there any chance Oscar can get some closure here? Now, let's talk about Gladys. As you all know, she's a duchess now. But it's far from being a dream scenario. Her sister-in-law, Lady Sarah, is making Gladys's life hell. She acts like she owns the place, totally sidelining Gladys in her own home. Even when Hector tries to be supportive and adjust seating arrangements to give Gladys more authority, it's not enough. I mean, nice gesture and all, but it doesn't exactly scream, "I've got your back." On top of that, Gladys is still trying to get used to life in England. The customs, the humor, everything feels foreign. Her one comfort, her maid Adelheid, gets fired by Lady Sarah, leaving her even more isolated. But then, Gladys takes a step I did not expect. She writes to Bertha. Yep, the same mom who forced her into this marriage. And I thought, wow, this is the start of something new. Maybe, just maybe, she's starting to channel Bertha's strength, for better or worse. And good news, from what we saw in the teaser for episode 6, Bertha's heading to London, and she's going to have a real talk with Gladys. She tells her daughter that sometimes you have to break a few eggs to make an omelette, which is classic Bertha code for it's time to go to war. I am beyond ready to watch Bertha and Gladys team up to take Lady Sarah down, and hopefully build a real marriage with Hector. This mother-daughter alliance is giving me everything. But that's not the only storm brewing in the Russell household. Even after that lavish event they threw, things are not okay. George's business is falling apart. The deal he desperately wants, to buy shares from the Merrick family, is dead on arrival. His advisor, Clay, breaks the news, and George doesn't take it well. He fires him on the spot and sends Larry to handle the negotiation instead. That's a bold move. Bertha tries her own version of damage control by charming Alfred Merrick at a dinner. But Merrick isn't buying what she's selling. He doesn't trust George. And even if he did, buying shares on the open market would cost more than George can afford. That's when it all gets personal. Bertha overhears that George is in deep trouble financially. Then, when George reads the letter from Gladys blaming Bertha for everything, he loses it. He tells her he won't even be home when she gets back from London. That's a huge blow. George is clearly on edge, overwhelmed by a wife who controls everything and a business that's crashing down. The stress is unbearable, and honestly, I don't blame him for snapping. Next episode, this mess will only get messier. George will learn that none of the deals are possible, which means they'll have to take on massive debt. And yes, there will be talks of divorce. I know it sounds wild, but George might actually walk away from Bertha. Whether or not it'll happen, though, is still up in the air. By the way, thankfully, Marion and Larry are finally engaged. But of course, it's not going to be that easy. Their families aren't exactly thrilled. Aunt Agnes, while putting on her best fake supportive face, confesses to Ada that she feels betrayed. Meanwhile, over at the Russell house, George is surprisingly chill about the whole thing. He congratulates the couple. But Bertha? Not so much. As usual, she's upset she wasn't the one pulling the strings. Thread Chapter 1, Bertha boards a boat, but not for a vacation. The trailer for the Gilded Age Season 3, Episode 6 opens with a powerful image, Bertha Russell at the docks, dressed in an immaculate traveling coat, her expression steely, and her eyes full of fire. This is not the Bertha we see throwing grand balls or maneuvering through social politics in New York. This is Bertha on a mission, a mother ready to cross the ocean, not for leisure, but for battle. And the battlefield? London society. Gladys's letter is what sets everything in motion. For those who might have missed the undertone, the letter is a cry for help masked in aristocratic politeness. While the public may think that Gladys is living the dream as the new duchess, the reality couldn't be more different. She's isolated in a cold, unfamiliar world, constantly undermined by her sister-in-law, Lady Sarah, and unsupported by her husband, Hector. Her once vibrant independence has been eroded by rigid tradition and relentless judgment. In short, the glittering crown has become a golden cage. And Bertha? She sees all of this instantly. The moment she reads that letter, she knows she has to act. Say what you will about Bertha Russell, but she's fiercely loyal to her children, even when she pushes them for her own ambition. This time, though, the stakes feel different. It's not about social climbing anymore, it's about saving her daughter from a life of quiet misery. That maternal instinct, so rarely shown in Bertha, erupts with full force in this episode. Her decision to leave George behind, especially when their marriage is on thin ice, is just as telling. Bertha is not one to walk away from her empire easily, but she knows this mission matters more. George, consumed by financial woes and emotional distance, is left to manage the fallout of his own crumbling deals. But Bertha? She boards that boat like a general heading to war. There's a gleam in her eye that says, "No one messes with my daughter, not even British nobility." The trailer even teases a striking moment, Bertha on the ship's deck, staring across the Atlantic as if she's already rehearsing her next move. The wind touzles her hair, but she doesn't flinch. Her confidence, her rage, and her purpose are all tightly packed in that one gaze. She's not going to London to play nice. She's going to remind everyone, Lady Sarah included, that a Russell doesn't retreat. She rewrites the rules. And let's be real, Sugar Bee fam, this might just be Bertha's most compelling arc yet. Gone is the woman obsessed solely with social status, now we're seeing the lioness underneath. Whether this trip ends in reconciliation or war, one thing is certain, the Bertha Russell arriving in London is not the same one society remembers. She's sharper, bolder, and more dangerous than ever. And honestly? We're here for it. While Bertha sets sail with a mission, the real storm is already raging in London, and it centers around Gladys Russell. Once hailed as the glittering debutante of New York society, Gladys now finds herself trapped in a world that is as cold as it is cruel. Her new title may be Duchess, but that crown has come at a steep emotional price. The life she imagined, the one Bertha promised her would be filled with grandeur and respect, is unraveling, and fast. At the center of her misery is Lady Sarah, her overbearing sister-in-law and self-appointed ruler of the household. The trailer for episode 6 paints a chilling portrait of this power dynamic. Sarah doesn't just dislike Gladys, she dismisses her entirely. Every interaction is laced with subtle digs and overt control, from managing guest lists without consulting her to interrupting Gladys during conversations with staff. But the final blow comes when Sarah fires Adelheid, Gladys's trusted lady's maid and only confidant in a sea of icy aristocrats. That decision isn't just cruel, it's strategic. Without Adelheid, Gladys is completely isolated, both emotionally and culturally. Gladys tries to adjust to English customs, but the world she's entered is unyielding. The humor feels foreign. The expectations feel suffocating. Even her husband Hector, charming in appearance but spineless in practice, proves to be no anchor. Whenever Gladys turns to him for support, he offers vague reassurances, only to fold under pressure from Sarah. It's not that Hector is heartless, he's just weak. And in a household ruled by Lady Sarah's iron will, weakness is as good as betrayal. The trailer shows a heart-wrenching moment. Gladys standing in the middle of a grand drawing room, alone, staring out the window with a look of defeat. Her isolation is palpable. This isn't the independent young woman we knew from New York. This is a duchess stripped of her power, trapped in a gilded cage. It's no wonder she finally turns to the one person who always finds a way, her mother. Gladys's letter to Bertha isn't filled with complaints, it's layered with subtle pleas and guarded pain. She doesn't say she's drowning, but it's clear between the lines. And when Bertha shows up at her doorstep, it's not just a rescue, it's a reckoning. This is the moment where Gladys's arc shifts from victim to fighter, and it's clear she's ready for a change. But she knows she can't do it alone. She needs Bertha's strategic brilliance, her unapologetic confidence, and yes, her fire. This chapter of the Gilded Age doesn't just show a young woman in crisis, it exposes the fragility of status without agency. Gladys may be a duchess in name, but without her voice, she's just another pawn. And thanks to Lady Sarah, that title has become a prison. But with Bertha now in London, the tides may be turning, and Gladys might finally get the chance to reclaim her power. The moment the trailer flashes Bertha Russell stepping into the cold, palatial halls of her daughter's English manor, we know we're about to witness something legendary. She's not dressed for diplomacy, she's dressed for war. With her back straight, chin high, and gloves on tight, Bertha doesn't just arrive, she invades. This is the kind of scene that makes the Gilded Age electric. The line she delivers, "Sometimes you have to break a few eggs to make an omelette," lands not as a metaphor, but as a clear, calculated threat. And it's aimed directly at Lady Sarah. Lady Sarah, up until this point, has ruled her household like a monarch in all but name. She's elegant, sharp-tongued, and merciless in her judgment. She sees Gladys as a commoner who got lucky, and Bertha as a vulgar American who clawed her way into respectability. To her, the Russell women are outsiders, unworthy of titles, traditions, or trust. But what she doesn't anticipate is how quickly Bertha reads the entire chessboard. Bertha isn't just there to console her daughter. She's there to change the balance of power. And from the moment they meet, the tension between Bertha and Lady Sarah is thick enough to cut with a knife. Their conversation isn't loud, but it's layered, every polite word is a jab, every gesture a countermove. Bertha opens with compliments, but they come laced with poison. Lady Sarah deflects with smug civility, but she clearly senses the threat. This isn't a tea party, it's a tactical showdown. The genius of Bertha's strategy lies in her restraint. She doesn't storm through the house barking orders. Instead, she listens, observes, and plays the long game. She chats with the staff. She flatters Hector just enough to spark his guilt. And slowly, she begins building small alliances within the house, all while making Lady Sarah look paranoid and overly controlling. One standout moment teased in the trailer shows Bertha interrupting a family dinner to make a point about respect and boundaries. It's subtle, not scandalous, but it lands like a thunderclap. Everyone at the table feels it. Hector glances nervously between the women. Even the servants pause to take it in. Bertha doesn't just command attention, she owns it. And for the first time, Lady Sarah is visibly shaken. As Bertha digs deeper, secrets begin to unravel. There are whispers that Lady Sarah's own position in society isn't as secure as she claims. There's mention of a prior scandal, buried years ago. And when Bertha catches wind of it, you can bet she'll use it. She's not above leveraging personal history if it means getting justice for Gladys, and securing her family's legacy. This is the Gilded Age at its best, high society turned battlefield. And in this war of words, glances, and veiled threats, no one fights quite like Bertha Russell. Lady Sarah may have held the upper hand for now, but Bertha's arrival marks the beginning of the end. The games have begun, and this time, the Duchess's mother is dealing the cards. While Bertha Russell is setting fires in London, her husband George is watching everything burn back home in New York. The once unshakable titan of the railroad industry is now a man under siege, from the market, from his own advisors, and increasingly, from within. The Russell Empire, once the envy of the city, is buckling under pressure, and George is feeling the cracks not only in his business, but in his marriage. In episode 6's trailer, we see a side of George that's far more vulnerable than we're used to. The suave businessman is unraveling, visibly tense, his usual control slipping away. It all begins with the collapse of a deal he was counting on, the acquisition of shares from the powerful Merrick family. It was meant to be the move that would stabilize his business, but instead, it's the one that shatters his confidence. When Clay, his longtime advisor, breaks the news, George doesn't ask questions. He fires him on the spot, in a moment of rage that feels less like leadership and more like desperation. Left without his trusted counsel, George turns to Larry, his son, inexperienced in the ruthless world of high finance. Sending Larry to salvage the deal isn't just risky, it's a sign that George has run out of options. And underneath it all is a lingering question that haunts every scene he's in: is George Russell losing his empire, and his identity? But it isn't just business that's spiraling. The real emotional gut punch comes when George reads a letter from his daughter Gladys, written from London. In it, she pours out her disillusionment. Not just with her life as a duchess, but with her mother's role in orchestrating it. She blames Bertha for the loneliness, the pressure, and the sacrifice of her happiness. For George, already teetering on the edge, the letter is a blow he doesn't recover from. In one of the trailer's most chilling moments, George tells Bertha he won't be home when she returns from London. The delivery is calm, but the implications are seismic. For a man who once admired his wife's strength, her ambition has now become a wall between them. He begins to question everything, whether their marriage is rooted in love or simply a shared lust for power. Has Bertha pushed too far? Has George had enough? And if that weren't enough, the financial collapse threatens to drag the entire family down with it. With no deal, no support system, and a wife who's thousands of miles away, George is forced to consider the unthinkable, taking on enormous debt or walking away from everything, including his marriage. Divorce, once an unspoken taboo among New York's elite, suddenly becomes a real possibility. The George Russell we see now isn't the master of the universe. He's a man caught in the middle of a storm he can't control. And if things continue at this pace, we may be witnessing the fall of not just a fortune, but a family. For a brief, shining moment, it looked like love had finally triumphed in the Gilded Age. Marion Brooke and Larry Russell, despite the class divides and clashing family expectations, were officially engaged. Their union seemed like the merging of two worlds, old money and new ambition. But as we've come to expect from Julian Fellowes' world of high society, nothing is ever that simple, or that secure. In the trailer for episode 6, the spotlight shifts from celebration to suspicion. George, under immense pressure from his business collapse, makes a last-minute decision to take Larry on a cross-country business trip. His motives seem clear: to prepare Larry for the harsh realities of empire building. But this decision leaves Marion behind in New York, and that's when the cracks begin to show. With Larry gone, Marion is left alone in a world that still doesn't fully accept her. Though she's engaged to one of New York's most eligible bachelors, she remains an outsider in both his social circle and her own. Aunt Agnes, though polite on the surface, confides in Ada that she feels betrayed by Marion's choice. After all, Marion didn't just marry out of love, she did so without seeking Agnes's blessing, which to her is as good as a betrayal of family values. But the real trouble begins when Marion starts hearing rumors, whispers about Larry's growing interest in the nightlife scene. There are mentions of clubs, late-night outings, and new acquaintances that seem at odds with the steady, respectful man she fell in love with. At first, Marion brushes it off. Larry has always had charm and charisma, it's part of what drew her in. But as she speaks to more people and catches fragments of conversation, doubt begins to seep in. The trailer teases several tense scenes: Marian sitting alone at a party, overhearing a group mention Larry's name in connection with a scandalous lounge, Marian confronting a mutual friend with a cautious, "Do you think he's changed?" and, perhaps most heartbreaking, a moment where she stares at her engagement ring in silence, clearly unsure of the path she's chosen. It's a striking reversal from the romantic momentum that had been building all season. Marian, once a symbol of hope and rebellion against society's constraints, now finds herself questioning whether love is enough. Larry's absence isn't just physical, it begins to feel emotional, too. And with George's empire teetering, Marian wonders whether she's walking into a crumbling dynasty, one that values ambition over intimacy. Could this engagement unravel before the wedding even takes place? All signs point to a growing storm. Marian's trust is fading, Larry's priorities are unclear, and both families are simmering beneath the surface. In the world of the Gilded Age, love is never just about affection, it's a transaction, a performance, and a political alliance. And unless Marian and Larry confront these realities head-on, their fairy tale might be over before it even begins. As the trailer draws to a close, we're given a scene that feels quiet on the surface, but if you're paying attention, you'll recognize it for what it truly is: the calm before an all-out social war. Bertha and Gladys Russell, seated in a richly adorned London parlor, share a look that says more than words ever could. This isn't just a touching mother-daughter reunion, it's a recalibration. For the first time in the entire series, we see these two powerful women not at odds, but aligned. And that alignment could shake the foundations of the English aristocracy. Gladys, once sheltered and reluctant to defy authority, is now visibly hardened by her experiences as the Duchess of Melbourne. Her letters hinted at suffering, but in person, the transformation is striking. She's no longer the unsure girl presented to New York society under her mother's guidance. She's a woman who's been pushed, belittled, and sidelined, but also one who is ready to fight back. The loss of her maid, the isolation in her own home, and the manipulations of Lady Sarah have forced Gladys to either break or bend steel. And it seems she's chosen the latter. And Bertha, never one to miss a signal, recognizes that change immediately. Instead of reprimanding or controlling, she listens. She doesn't impose her plan but builds one with her daughter. This moment, subtle but monumental, marks the beginning of a new alliance. Bertha has always been a strategist. But now, she has a co-conspirator in Gladys. And that changes everything. The trailer gives us a glimpse of this new dynamic, Bertha standing behind Gladys as she addresses the household. Gladys, poised and confident, speaks firmly, while Bertha looks on, silently approving. It's clear they're crafting something together, an elegant but dangerous plan to reclaim control over the manor and silence Lady Sarah's rule. The English may pride themselves on discretion and diplomacy, but Bertha Russell plays an unapologetically American game. She's brought her own rulebook to London, and the aristocracy won't know what hit them. Yet, while this alliance strengthens abroad, cracks continue to spread at home. The Russell empire in New York is faltering. George is emotionally distant, potentially considering divorce, and Larry's engagement is hanging by a thread. Bertha may have traveled across the Atlantic to fix one crisis, but another is ready to implode behind her. That duality, of progress in one sphere and chaos in another, sets the stage for an explosive episode 6. The trailer ends not with a dramatic confrontation or scandal, but with a loaded silence, Gladys and Bertha exchanging a glance that says, "We're not done yet." It's the calm before the storm, the breath before the battle cry. And if history has taught us anything, it's that when the Russells go to war, they never fight to lose. London is about to learn exactly who Bertha Russell is, and this time, she's not fighting for herself. She's fighting for her daughter. And that makes her unstoppable. So, what do you think, Sugar Bee fam? Will Bertha's arrival in London change the tide for Gladys? Can George hold his empire together? And are Marian and Larry already doomed? Let me know your predictions in the comments, And don't forget to like and subscribe for more weekly breakdowns. The Gilded Age is only getting wilder, and I've got you covered every step of the way.